Hello everyone, NecroBMX here, and yeah, I decided to make another tier maker video. This time I'm covering the Dragon Quest games. Now while unlike the previous two I did for World of Mana and for Saga, I haven't streamed all of these, but I have played all of these with one exception. I'm going to explain that. Also, you may notice that the tiers are a little bit differently. I don't have a D tier this time. I have an X tier, and I don't have an F tier. And I went with less tiers because this is Dragon Quest. This is literally my favorite series of all time. Like, it's near and dear to me, and there are no F tier games in Dragon Quest. There's not even any D tier games in Dragon Quest. It's just A, B, and C, and S, of course. S, A, B, C. The X tier, or the 10 tier, you might figure out what I'm going to put there for a game that I haven't played. So, yeah. But let's go in order. We've got Dragon Quest. We've got Dragon Quest II, Luminaries of the Legendary Line. We've got Dragon Quest III, The Seeds of Salvation. Dragon Quest IV, Chapters of the Chosen. Dragon Quest V, Hand of the Heavenly Bride. Dragon Quest VI, Realms of Reverie. Dragon Quest VII, Fragments of the Forgotten Past. Dragon Quest VIII, Journey of the Cursed King. No alliteration on that one. Dragon Quest IX, Sentinels of the Starry Skies. Dragon Quest X, Rise of the Five Tribes Online. No alliteration there either. And Dragon Quest XI, Echoes of an Elusive Age. So, these games have all been released on multiple consoles, and there have been remakes out the yin-yang and whatnot. And I'm going to kind of explain what systems they're for, you know, what each one, what systems I played them on. And I'm not going, when I'm making these tiers, I'm not going by usually any particular version because, I mean, I've played multiple versions of all but two of these games, all but three of these games, actually, now that I think of. There's three of these games that I've only played in one form. But all the others I've played multiples of, and I'm kind of going to do a mixture of taking just like the very best version or just taking the game as a whole, and just, you know, I'll talk about what versions there are and what I think are the best to go to. So anyway, let's start with the original Dragon Quest. I originally played this back on the NES as Dragon Warrior. That was the original release. I also played it on Game Boy Color back in the day, and I played it on the mobile phone version, and most recently I played the Super Famicom version, which I had a fan translation for. There's also a Nintendo Switch version, which I have not played. So, oh, and to go over the tiers real quick, you guys know S tier is the very, very best, A tier is excellent, B tier is good, C tier is average. There are no D or F tiers for Dragon Quest because they're all at least average. And the X tier is something I haven't actually played. So, that being said, the original Dragon Quest, I'm just going to pop that in the C tier. Like, nostalgia aside, and also historical importance aside, because this is historically an incredibly important game. It's also kind of the first of its kind in a way. It's really like, it's not the first Japanese RPG, but it's the first JRPG. If I could explain that very briefly, basically what I mean is that JRPG is a specific style of RPG that was created with Dragon Quest, and most JRPGs have followed from Dragon Quest, whereas there were Japanese RPGs previous to that. They weren't really JRPGs, they were just RPGs made in Japan, if that makes sense. They were closer to Western-style RPGs such as Ultima or Wizardry, which are both incredibly popular there. And what's interesting is that Dragon Quest started as an attempt to do an Ultima or a Wizardry, but make it work for the Famicom, where for all these PC games, you had a PC. You had joysticks, mice, and keyboards with lots of different buttons. And this is like, let's see if we could do this on a Famicom with a D-pad, 2 buttons, you know. And they managed to make it work. Historically, incredibly significant. As a game, though, like, it's primordial. You only have one character. The quest is very simple. It is sort of open-ended, which is cool. Like, you're sort of just thrown into the world with, hey, the Dragon Lord is evil. Figure out how to defeat him. And there's really two goals in the game. One is to make yourself powerful enough, and the other is to figure out how to get to the Dragon Lord, because he's on an island, and you have to create a rainbow bridge, and there's like a lot of different things you have to do to make that happen. It's still cool to go back to. It's very, very short. There's only one character. You only encounter one enemy at a time. It's very simplistic and primordial by today's standards. So that's why it's in the C tier. Okay, so moving on to Dragon Quest II, Luminaries of the Legendary Line. I played it on NES. I played it on Game Boy Color as well. I played the mobile phone version, and most recently I did play the SNES version translated by fans. This one is interesting because I think it gets kind of maligned in the Dragon Quest fan community. People tend to say that Dragon Quest II is the worst one, or at least the least fun one, and I don't really see where they're coming from on that. Like, all of the things that apply to this game apply to the first game as well. It being very open-ended, it being kind of difficult and unforgiving at times. It's just on a grander scale. I do think I'm going to put it in the C tier anyway, but a little bit ahead here. I'm going to put it to the left because I do think it's an improvement over Dragon Quest I in every way, shape, or form. You get 3 characters instead of 1 character. You can fight multiple enemies. The quest is a lot longer. You get to explore the world on a ship this time instead of just, locked to one landmass. It's better, yes. Is it incredibly difficult? Yes. And each successive remake has mitigated the unbalanced nature of the NES game more and more, to the point where I think that most people are saying that 2 is the worst one, not so much based on the version that they're playing, which is probably going to be the mobile port or the Switch port, but they're basing it on their memories of having this game kick their butt back in the day. So I don't really agree with that assessment. So I'm going to put it is a C tier game, simply because it's pretty much just an evolved version. It's of the first game. It is better in every way, but it's just missing the mark for a B tier game, and the competition is really fierce here. Okay, so Dragon Quest III, The Seeds of Salvation. I played the NES version, I played the Game Boy Color version, and I played the mobile phone version. I have yet to play the Super Nintendo version. I've seen it. It looks wonderful. I am planning on playing that pretty soon on Twitch. And of course, there's also, like Dragon Quest 1 and 2, it is also a Switch version that I have not played. So this game is just really good. I'm going to just pop that right into the A tier. The only reason that it's not in the S tier is, it's a really simple reason, is because while the story is very grandiose and wonderful and really cool in this one, it is a prequel to the first 2 games, so you got to kind of see the origin of things that appeared in Dragon Quest 1 and 2 and how it all ties together. You really only have one character that has any sort of character, and really that is just limited. It's sort of like Dragon Quest 1 in that way, where you have your main character, Arus, or whatever you name him, and or her, because you can't play as a woman in this game. And then you can recruit characters from a party planning place. This system is sort of akin to Ultima, and you can get, fighters, mages, warriors, priests, and I think thieves in some of the remakes, and clowns, and they each have their jobs, and then later on there's a way to change jobs, and if there's a character you not like, you can boot them out of your party. But they don't have like any kind of personalities, or they never have any dialogue or anything. They're literally just your companions that are helping you. So I think that's the one thing that stops Dragon Quest III from reaching S tier. I guess there's one other thing I could talk about with Dragon Quest III, like one other like very extremely mild criticism of Dragon Quest III is that, now it flew out of my head. I had it a second ago. I thought of another one, and then as I'm leading up to that, it flew out of my head. So maybe it wasn't all that big of a deal. But yeah, it's a really, really good game. I know what it was. The job system. When you change jobs in this game, it actually resets your level to level 1. And while your character will catch up quickly, it can be really annoying to deal with, especially if you're trying to get sages, that you have to like, train up a priest or a mage up to level 20 and then have them, change jobs, and now they're level 1. And while the sage is going to be more powerful, there is that temptation to just stick with the main characters and not give them any sort of class change. I rarely use the class change. I probably will next time I play it for Twitch, for the Super Nintendo version. But yeah, it's really interesting. It's a really, really good game that I recommend. The soundtrack is just complete fire. Really one of the best NES games out there. Okay, so Dragon Quest IV, Chapters of the Chosen. Let's see, I played this one on the NES. I played this one on the DS. And that's actually it, really. Just the NES and DS. I think there was a PlayStation version that came out in Japan only. I keep forgetting whether the PlayStation version of Dragon Quest IV actually came out or not. I think it either got canceled or it was out, but only in Japan. I remember when I had Dragon Quest VII, when it was called Dragon Warrior 7 for the PlayStation, there was actually an ad for Dragon Quest IV for PlayStation in the liner notes in the manual. The company that was going to translate Dragon Quest IV for the PlayStation went out of business, and they just never released that version. I would have bought it, of course. I'm a big fan of this game. So this game is amazing. And as a matter of fact, I'm just going to pop it right into the A tier. And I think it's even better than 3. And I know some people love 3 to the point where they would say it's better than 4. As a matter of fact, some people are probably like, yo, 3 is an S tier game. But I love 4 even more, and even then I'm still not putting 4 in the S tier because the competition here is so fierce. First of all, this game is wonderful. This is the first game that I ever personally experienced that had a chapter system where you have different chapters to the game that unfold and the narrative sort of shifts. In the first chapter, you're playing as Ragnar, who's a knight trying to look for some missing children in his small country. In the second chapter, you play as Princess Elena and her 2 traveling companions going to a fighting tournament. In the third chapter, you play as a merchant named Taloon, who is just on a mission to open his own business. That one's really different, and it's really cool too. And the fourth chapter is a pair of sisters, Mina and Maya, who are trying to avenge their father's death. And each of these takes place in completely different locations throughout the world. There's a little bit of overlap with 2 of the chapters. For the most part, they all start in their own respective parts of the world. And then the 5th chapter, you play as the hero. The hero solo, or if you choose the female hero, her name is Sophia, or whatever name you chose to give the hero. And you actually will gather all of these characters that had previously been playable into your party. The NES version blew me away back then, not only because of the whole chapter system, but because of the storytelling. This game actually has a really great and really tragic story. It started a lot of the tropes the Japanese RPGs follow, like sympathetic villains and such, and tragic backstories. And, you know, it's just a really wonderful game in almost every way. The only criticisms in the NES version, once you get to the 5th chapter, you don't control the majority of the party. You only control the hero, and everybody else just kind of does whatever, and you have to let the AI do what they will. The DS version made it where you could use AI or you could not use AI. I always prefer not to use the AI, but even if you choose to use it, at least in the DS version, it gave you different options of how the AI would play. So that's pretty cool. My only criticism for the DS version is that there's a 6th chapter that was added, but I felt that it could have been a little fleshed out more, but it's extra content, so I can't really complain too much about it. But Dragon Quest IV is absolutely wonderful. It's very deserving of the A tier. So, moving on to Dragon Quest V. So, Dragon Quest V was released for Super Famicom, and it was not released in the United States because at the time that it came out, Enix had closed their North American branch, and while there were still games that Enix was publishing in the United States, they weren't games that required this level of translation. It was games like Soul Blazer and ActRaiser, you know, and Illusion of Gaia. Dragon Quest V just didn't make the cut for translation in the United States because it's just simply a lot of text. But I did play it. I actually, believe it or not, I played this in the most bizarre way possible. I did play it on an emulator, but it wasn't on my computer. It was actually on a console, but it was on my Dreamcast. I set up my Dreamcast, I hacked it, basically, to play NES and Super NES games at one point. And I wish I could still use it for this purpose, but it broke. But a physical issue with the Dreamcast, not that the emulator broke it. Oh dear, what have I done? Let's put that back up there. So, yeah, you know, so I played it, I played a patched ROM for a Super Famicom game on my Dreamcast, so that was fun. And then there was the DS version. There was also a version for PlayStation 2, and that has recently been fan-translated, but I've never personally played it. And it's also on mobile phones. 4 is on mobile phones as well. And some people have said that the mobile phone version of 4 is even better, but I digress. So Dragon Quest V, Hand of the Heavenly Bride, is absolutely an S-tier game. It's one of the best RPGs you'll play. Like Dragon Quest IV, it has kind of a chapter system, or in this case, it's like a game in 3 acts. And the first act is your childhood. You know, the game actually starts with your main character being born, and then it skips forward a little bit to where you're a very young child traveling with your father, Pancras, throughout the countryside, having adventures and getting into trouble. And then a tragedy befalls you, and the second act will begin, and you're a teenager, you know, and you are traveling with your friend, Prince Harry, and just, you know, still you're looking for your family. You know, the whole game is about trying to find your mother, who disappeared very shortly after you were born. And then I don't want to give like too many story spoilers here, so I'm glossing over a lot of things, because if you haven't played Dragon Quest V, you absolutely need to play this game. But the third act of the game is about you and your wife traveling with your own children. This game subverted a lot of expectations in a lot of ways, and the way that it told its story is really good. I absolutely would recommend the DS version over the original Super Famicom version, simply because the story is told better. It's just a better translation and more fleshed out. Also, some of the villains are a little more characterized a little better than in the Super Famicom version, so that really helps in the storytelling. Another big improvement is that there are 3 women to choose from to marry, because getting married is part of the game. That's why it's called Hand of the Heavenly Bride. And the choice that they added is absolutely the best choice. She's at least the most amusing choice. So yeah, Dragon Quest V is a game that you absolutely need to play. Okay, so moving on to Dragon Quest VI, Realms of a Relation. This was released for the Super Famicom, and it was, like Dragon Quest V, it was never released here. And unlike this one, I never actually played the Super Famicom version of this. I do plan on playing it one day just to experience it, but I played the remake on the DS. So I'm basing my opinion here. There's also a mobile version, but I haven't played that. Solely on the DS version. So that being said, Dragon Quest VI, I'm going to pop this into the B tier. It's a good game, you know, it's a good game. I like it a little less because I think that, like, okay, first of all, the game is really cool. It's got this cool system of there being, you know, kind of a light world, dark world, except it's the real world and the dream world, and they're not just exact copies of each other. They are different, but they do affect each other. The characters that you play as and meet are very colorful and interesting. Some of the most interesting party members you'll have in the entire series. And also there's a job system similar to Dragon Quest III, except now all your characters have their own names and personalities and everything, so it's not just like stock characters. That being said, yeah, Dragon Quest VI drags a little in the middle. It is sort of also a 3-act game like Dragon Quest V was, but the second act just is kind of a little bit of a slog, and that's what keeps it out of the A tier. It's an excellent game, and kind of like, I remember I played it on the DS, and I remember coming away from it like, yeah, that was pretty good, but it was nowhere near as good as 4 and 5, you know, that I had already played on the DS, you know. And that was my first time playing Dragon Quest VI, so I had like no expectation going into it. I hadn't, because 4 I'd played on the NES, 5 I'd played on the Super Famicom. So it was sort of interesting that I kind of came up with it. But yeah, that was good, but not as good. The second time I played it, I was sort of like really liking it a lot as I'm starting out and I'm just experiencing the adventure all over again. And I'm like, wow, why did I like this one as much as the others? And then I got to the middle of the game and I was sort of like, oh, that's why it drags here. And then towards the end, it picks up a little, but at that point, this is not the longest Dragon Quest game, but it's sort of the longest feeling Dragon Quest game at times. So that's why I think it goes in the B tier. Okay, so Dragon Quest VII, Fragments of the Forgotten Past. It was originally released on PlayStation, and I did play that version. And then there was a remake for the 3DS, which of course I also did play. So I'm just going to go ahead and put this in the B tier, but I'm going to put it ahead of 6. I think it's better than 6. Most of the things that I could say about 6 apply to 7. It's got a cast of really fun, colorful characters. It's got a fun story. It's got a job system that's handled a lot better than it was in 3. And it's kind of told in 3 acts as well. And it also kind of lags a little in the middle. Dragon Quest VII is a lot longer than Dragon Quest VI. As a matter of fact, it's probably the longest Dragon Quest game. Believe it or not, the 3DS remake is actually a little bit shorter than the original. Even though they added new content and they expanded the dialogue, it's still a little bit shorter just because there's a few things they streamlined just to make things flow a little better, because it did need a little bit of streamlining. I think what keeps Dragon Quest VII out of the A tier completely is that there have been 2 iterations of this game on the PlayStation and on the 3DS, and they've both been a little ugly, I guess you could say. Like, they're not hideous by any stretch of the imagination. None of these games are really hideous. But Dragon Quest has never really been known for its amazing graphics. But if you look at Dragon Quest VI, it's a pretty attractive game by Super Nintendo standards. And then if you look at Dragon Quest VII, you might think that it's very, very early PlayStation, when in fact it was actually released later in the system's lifespan. So by the time it came out, we had already seen a couple of really attractive games. Like, I think Final Fantasy IX might have already been out, and I think Chrono Cross was already out. So there was these 2 really gorgeous games on the PlayStation, and Dragon Quest VII, it was either a little bit later around the same time, and it looked like a very early PlayStation game. The 3DS version is certainly a big improvement, but it's always so zoomed in that there are so many times where I really wish I could just pull the camera back a bit and see more of the surroundings. But for whatever reason, they chose to keep the camera very close to the main characters pretty much at all times, and that can be a little bit of a drag. But yeah, I do recommend Dragon Quest VII. It is a lot of fun, but it is an experience that will take you a very long time to get through. Like, it is an insanely long game. Okay, so Dragon Quest VIII. This is an S tier game right here. As a matter of fact, I'm going to put it right here. It's even better than 5. Dragon Quest VIII had 2 releases. Well, it had 3 releases. There was the PlayStation 2 version. There was the mobile phone version, which I never played. And there was the 3DS version. Now, the 3DS version, and I can't speak to the mobile phone version very much, but 3DS version is sort of interesting because there's sort of mixed reactions to Dragon Quest VIII on the 3DS. And I just want to address this now. Some people have said that the game is extremely censored, and really it's not. There's a few things that are censored that has to do with like fan servicey type things, like costumes for the female characters that were just a little bit more covered up than they were. There was nothing really lewd in the original. The reason that they did this in Dragon Quest VIII is because the standards in Japan have changed a lot, and to get the same age rating that they had, in the PlayStation 2 era, they had to change things up a bit because for whatever reason, the Japanese ratings board, which I believe is called SERO, is very concerned with characters being able to look up women's skirts in games. They're very upset about they're going to find the camera controls and look up a skirt and see panties, or maybe a little butt cheek. And that's why so many modern games don't even render anything under a skirt. Like that's why Smash Brothers is the way it is. It's the Japanese ratings board. And even if the developers make it impossible for the players to do this, Sero is like, no, the players are going to hack it. They're going to look, and they're going to reflect that rating based on what hackers might see and like put on like YouTube or something. So that's why. But it really is just a few costumes. Obviously, the graphics on the 3DS are not as good as the PlayStation 2, and the music. Now, this is an interesting one because the music in the 3DS version is a MIDI synth sort of thing. It sounds very good, but the original, everybody goes, well, the original had this orchestrated soundtrack. And getting Dragon Quest VIII to run on a 3DS is a miracle. Like it doesn't even have 3D. They had to not put 3D in it for it to run on the 3DS, which is kind of amazing. But believe it or not, the original version of Dragon Quest VIII in Japan did not have the orchestrated soundtrack. And Dragon Quest VIII set a weird precedent where even though this was a game, these games are incredibly popular in Japan to the point where it's practically the Japanese religion, and they're a little less known in the rest of the world. Although the series is gaining a lot of popularity now due to Dragon Quest XI and Super Smash Brothers. Traditionally, it's been a little less known outside of Japan. But starting with Dragon Quest VIII, the international versions, the versions that come out in places like Europe and the United States, are better. And we got an orchestrated soundtrack, and we got voice acting for the first time in Dragon Quest history. As a matter of fact, Dragon Quest VIII has never had voice acting in Japan, ever. Not even on the 3DS, I think, which is interesting. So, yeah. So we got the better version, which was kind of cool. This was also the first game that was released in United States and Europe as Dragon Quest and not Europe. Well, in Europe, it was the first Dragon Quest game to come out at all, so it didn't have the number in the title. It was just Dragon Quest Journey of the Cursed King. So, yeah, let me actually talk about the actual game. It's beautiful. The soundtrack is sublime. The story is wonderful. I still think like the 3DS version is the better version to play simply because they got rid of random encounters. Now, I don't mind random encounters in video games at all. I'm fine with them. I played through Dragon Quest VIII, never once minding random encounters. But Dragon Quest 9 and 11 and the remake of 8 have introduced where you can see the enemies. They still pop up randomly, but you can see them. And this makes it easier, not because I want to avoid encounters, but because it makes it easier to find specific enemies, which you often have to do, especially like if you need money, you want to fight Goldmen. If you want experience, you want to fight Metal Slimes, that kind of thing. But there's also quests to find specific enemies and such, and sometimes you need drops from certain enemies because there's a crafting system in this. I could yak on and on and on and on and on about Dragon Quest VIII all day. All I can say is it's an S tier game. Dragon Quest 9, this one's hard to place. I think that 9's hard to place. It really is. It's difficult to. I think I'm gonna put it. God, this is hard to do. I think I'm going to put it here in the beats here, but better than 7. Dragon Quest IX has only had one version. It was on the DS, and it's never been ported, remastered, remade, or anything. It's still only on the DS, which is a shame because there's a lot, and I do mean a lot, of free DLC that you can get for this game that you can no longer get, even though it's already on the cart. That's why it's free. But you have to unlock it using the Nintendo DS service that is no longer around. Even if you emulate it, you have to kind of play a ROM hack version to play the DLC version. This game needs a port or a remaster or something badly. This game has a really cool story. You actually play as an angel who falls to Earth and is set to protect the Earth people and find the fruits of the World Tree, which are called figs. It's got a really cool angle to it. I really like the way the story plays out. I really liked all the different locations, the different take on crafting. Once again, this one has a job system, and it's kind of a lot like Dragon Quest 3 in that you basically play alone and you can get 3 random party members that you can give them names and whatever, you know, and you could even choose what they look like and stuff. You could even customize your own character quite a lot. But the reason that this one, I think, hits different than 3 is because it has multiplayer, which is another thing that you really can't access anymore because it's on the DS. But it has multiplayer where you can team up with 3 other adventurers instead of having random companions, and a lot of people, especially in Japan, chose to play it that way. So it's almost like an MMO, but not, which brings me to Dragon Quest X. But it's a multiplayer RPG that you don't have to play multiplayer, but it is an option. I think that the multiplayer aspect is the only thing that really stops it from being in the A tier. Not that I'm against multiplayer, but due to the nature of it, you didn't have a party of fleshed out characters like you had in 8 and 7 and 6 and 5 and 4. It was more like 3. So it's a bit of a throwback in that way, but it's not bad. The game absolutely needs a remake or a remaster or even just a port. Just give us, just release it on Steam, please. Okay, Dragon Quest X. So this one, this goes in the X tier, which is funny is that when I put that there, I'm going to call it the X tier because it's the I haven't played it tier, and I just want it to be a letter so it's all uniform, so I just chose X as in the unknown. But then I realized, wait, Dragon Quest X, the Roman numeral is an X. So I'm like, hey, it's the 10 tier. I didn't even, honestly did not even think about that until right after I started recording this video. So yeah, Dragon Quest X is an MMO. And Square Enix has this really stupid habit of doing this where they'll release an MMO as a numbered entry in the series. They first did this with Final Fantasy XI. And I remember hearing that there was going to be a Final Fantasy XI, and I was excited. And then I heard it was going to be an MMO, and then I was not excited because I really don't play these sorts of games. I'm not into them. And I didn't understand why they had to call it Final Fantasy XI, why it couldn't be called Final Fantasy Online. You know, and then they did it again with Final Fantasy XIV, which to me could have been called Final Fantasy Online 2. They didn't go with that. This game totally could have been Dragon Quest Online. I think that would have been great, but instead they called it Dragon Quest X. Now, from what I hear, this actually does have a really amazing story, and Square Enix is working on a version called Dragon Quest X Offline, which they revealed not too long ago, and I got to see the trailer and everything. They have not definitively announced whether or not Dragon Quest X Offline version is going to come out outside of Japan, but if it does, you bet that I will play it, assuming it comes out for Steam, which I really hope it does. Dragon Quest 11, people have managed to play it. They've even managed to play it in English with on-screen text translator things and stuff like that. I would play it. It's just it's never been released here. Even though I don't like MMOs, I love Dragon Quest enough to give it a shot. But you still have to pay a subscription service. There's versions for the Wii, the Wii U, the PS4, the Switch, and I think Windows as well. But yeah, I'm just not into that kind of game. And even if it was released, even if I was, it was never released here. And they still have no plans to release it here. But I'm hoping that that offline version that's just like a regular RPG does find an international audience. So then, moving on to Dragon Quest XI, Echoes of an Elusive Age. Yeah, I mean, this goes right here. It's the best game in the series. It's one of the best games ever made. It's a masterpiece. There's a reason that I'm streaming it again. Yes, there's 2 different versions. Believe it or not, Dragon Quest XI was actually first released for the 3DS. But only in Japan. For some reason, we did not get the 3DS version, sadly. They released a PlayStation 4 version that they had been working on simultaneously just a little while later. I think they were supposed to release at the same time, but the PS4 version got pushed back a few weeks or a few months or something like that. And then it was released on PC not too long after that. And that's the version I originally played, the Steam version. And then they released it on the Switch, where they called it Dragon Quest XI-S, Echoes of an Elusive Age Definitive Edition, where they added a whole bunch of new content. And this had something to do with the president of Nintendo being a huge Dragon Quest fan, and he really wanted Dragon Quest XI to be on the Switch, and they promised him that the Dragon Quest XI for the Switch would be the version. They have since released Dragon Quest XI-S on PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Steam, and yeah, I got it again for Steam, and I'm streaming it again, and yeah, it was just let's play Dragon Quest XI again. This game is absolutely wonderful. It's got the best story, it's got the best graphics, it's got the best gameplay. It's not only an S-tier Dragon Quest game, it's an S-tier game in general. Like, if I was to give you my top 5 like video games of all time, it's a pretty safe bet that Dragon Quest XI would be on there. This game is just pure joy from beginning to end. It's also really, really long, but it never feels like it's a drag. The new content is really cool. I do have like a few feelings about the way that they deliver the new content, where it's all sort of front loaded in the second act, but I feel that they could have spaced out some of the new content more. But there's also a huge quest that you could play that involves 2D mode and visiting other Dragon Quest games that plays out throughout the entire game. Yeah, it's a wonderful, wonderful game. So there's my Dragon Quest tier list. So kind of like ranking the series from best to, I guess, least best. It would be 11, 8, 5, 4, 3. It's so hard to do this, but it's like picking your favorite child. 9, 7, 6, 2, and 1, and then 10 being one that I've never played but would like to play at some point, the offline version at least. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed it. That's my ranking of Dragon Quest games. Yours is bound to be different. It's because it's my opinion as opposed to your opinion, but I'd be happy to hear about your thoughts on these wonderful games. And yeah. And we're awaiting Dragon Quest XII because that also got announced recently, as well as another remake of 3 and a bunch of spin-offs. So, yeah, I'm excited for literally all of that. See you guys soon.